Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to our 61st step in our walking tour through the Bible. Now, a great thing about walking to the tour through the Bible is you can speed up or slow down as the case may be. And I'm going to dash ahead in this one to chapter 23 and chapter 24 of the book of Joshua, the final chapters. Largely because the bits I'm skipping over, we've already covered. I mean, we've talked about the conquest of southern Palestine. Well, then we have the conquest of northern Palestine. And then we have a description of all the inheritance of the tribes and where each tribe lives and a whole load of place names. None of it is particularly interesting. The book of Joshua is often described as blood-curdling military history, and it's often dismissed as blood-curdling military history. But in these last two chapters, we have some of the purport of the book of Joshua from a theological perspective, why it is in fact not just military history, it's also religious history. Now, in chapter 23, Joshua sums up his work and gives sort of a valedictory address to the Israelites before he's about to die. He's now an old man. And he talks about how God has given them the land, although at the same time it contradicts itself and says, well, except for certain bits where the foreigners are still living. And he says, this is 23:6, so be very firm about keeping and doing everything written in the book of the law of Moses, not swerving from that either to right or left. Okay, so that's what they've got to do, keep to the law of Moses. Fine. Then he gives a set of rules, if you like, or rulings, which will safeguard the people from even thinking about swerving to right or to left or abandoning the law of Moses. He says the following: never mix with the peoples who are still left beside you. Do not utter the names of their gods. Now, this is not in the law of Moses. You're not allowed to talk to foreigners or mix with foreigners. Do not utter the names of their gods. Do not swear by them, do not serve them, and do not bow down to them. On the contrary, you must be loyal to the Lord your God, as you've been until now. The Lord has dispossessed great and powerful nations before you, and no one so far has been able to resist you, and so on. However, be very careful as you value your life to love the Lord your God. But should you in any way relapse, if you make friends with the remnant of these nations, so you're not even allowed to be friendly to the foreigner. If you intermarry with them, despite the fact Moses himself married a foreigner, hadn't he? Don't forget the priest of Midian's daughter. If you mix with them and they with you, so no socialization, please, then know for certain that the Lord your God will stop dispossessing these nations before you, and for you they will be a snare, a pitfall, thorns in your sides and thistles in your eyes, till you vanish from this fine country given to you by the Lord your God. Well, what's all this about? What actually is going on here is this law against intermarriage, this law against, obviously you don't want to marry them, so therefore best you don't even speak to them, best you have nothing to do with them, so there's no danger of you ever marrying them, is there? No Romeo and Juliet situations are likely to arise if you don't actually know anybody from the other tribe. Incidentally, I once spoke to some Syrian friends about this, and I said, what happens when a Catholic or Christian boy in Syria falls in love with a Muslim girl? And they said, oh, it could never happen. I said, why not? I said, well, you don't know any Muslims. Syria, this was before the war, was very much a divided society. People might have friendly relations with people from opposite communities, but they wouldn't have socialized with them at all, and the boys and the girls would not have socialized. So if you were a Muslim girl, you went to Muslim parties. If you were a Catholic boy, you went to Catholic parties, and everything was compartmentalized. That's what this is talking about. So intermarriage doesn't happen. Now, but the real thing that Joshua is warning about is what we call syncretism. And what is syncretism? Well, syncretism is something Catholics should be very wary of, and Protestants are even more wary of than Catholics, and certain other religions not so very wary at all. Syncretism means taking up something you like the look of and absorbing it into your religious practice. That's not a very scientific definition, but that's essentially what it is. Now, some people accuse Catholics of being syncretistic, and they say, well, you know, the honor paid to the Blessed Virgin Mary in the Catholic Church is in fact syncretism, because all they've done is they've taken on the pagan cult of Venus and sort of Catholicized it rather lightly. This, in fact, historically is simply false. It's not true. Simply, it's not true either. There's not a shred of evidence to suggest that Easter was once a pagan festival. It's simply not true. Christianity is not a syncretistic religion. Everything that's in Christianity has been given to us by the apostles. This is what we firmly believe. Anything that has not been given to us by the apostles but has crept in later is to be excluded and thrown out. Now, for our Jewish brethren, there's a terrible, terrible temptation when they get into the land that they will look around them, see the people living around them, and take up some of their practices. In other words, visit their shrines, join in their worship, and take up some of the things that they do, such as fertility rites and so on and so forth. Now, does this sound familiar? Well, yes, it does, because nowadays there's a real great danger of syncretism for us. Many people, for example, who claim to be Catholics, nevertheless decide that in certain respects they will follow the world or the wisdom of the world. And they say, oh, well, Catholicism teaches X, but we know better now. We know that, for example, life does not begin at conception, for example. Or else they'll say, yes, I'm a Catholic. However, at the same time, I also consult tarot card readers. Or at the same time, I do various superstitions like crossing my fingers and so on and so forth, looking at my horoscope and so on and so forth, consulting magi and people who claim to be people with second sight, going to fortune tellers and so on. Now, you can go to a fortune teller as a Catholic, but you do so as purely for your own amusement. You don't do it because you think the fortune teller has got anything to say. You just think it's rather an amusing way of passing the time. Best not to go to a fortune teller, actually, altogether. Again, playing with Ouija boards is something you should not do. But these are things that are anti-Catholic things, non-Catholic things, that enter into Catholicism and are like worms that you discover in an apple. Well, they shouldn't be there. And if they stay there much longer, they destroy the entire apple. That whole apple is rotten. Now, this is essentially what Joshua has got in mind, that the Jews, in going amongst the people who are in Canaan, will cease to be Jewish. And as we'll see, this is a major, major theme of the Old Testament. It's also a major theme of the modern world, that we need to keep our powder dry. We need to keep our Catholicism pure and simple. That is to say, not sophisticated, not chopped up and mixed up with things that are not Catholic. The most obvious and most intellectual form of syncretism is, of course, liberation theology, which is a way of blending Marxist doctrine with Catholic doctrine at the expense of Catholic doctrine. The more Marxism you put into Catholicism, it doesn't mean the more Catholicism you have. It means the less Catholicism you have. Catholicism will eventually wither, and you'll just end up as a run-of-the-mill Marxist. Whereas, of course, if you introduce Aristotelian categories into Catholicism, that will expand your Catholicism, make your Catholicism more coherent. It won't destroy it. There are certain things that can be combined with Catholicism, certain things that can't be combined with Catholicism. And clearly the practices of the Canaanites could not be combined with Judaism. And that is why he's warning them. In the next chapter, chapter 24, what happens is the covenant is reenacted. Joshua is a sort of liturgical book in that it talks about, we've had the covenant with Moses, now we have the covenant with God, the covenant with God presided over by Moses, now we have the covenant with God presided over by Joshua. And Joshua says, now fear the Lord and serve him truly and sincerely. This is verse 14. Banish the gods whom your ancestors served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems a bad thing to you, today you must make up your minds whom you do mean to serve, whether the gods whom your ancestors served beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose country you are now living. As regards my family and me, we shall serve the Lord. The people replied, far be it from us to desert the Lord and to serve other gods. The Lord our God was one who brought us out, and us and our ancestors here from Egypt, from the place of slave labor and so on. So the people renew their covenant with the Lord. And thus the book of Joshua ends. The renewal of the covenant is very important, and as we'll see, the covenant is renewed later on, indeed, by the king Josiah at the time of the Deuteronomical history work was put together. Constantly people fall away into syncretism. Constantly people renew their adherence to the Lord. The covenant is like a marriage, and marriages have to be worked at, or so I'm told. So let us work at our marriage with the Lord. That's enough of the book of Joshua. Something very exciting is coming up very shortly, the book of Judges. All the best. Bye.